So today I'm going to be doing a little bit more of a presentation on epigenetics. So you guys already have an idea of what epigenetics is, since this will give you one. So does anybody actually know a little bit more about it, like anything else, just what she told you? I'm going to take that as a yeah with all your blank places. All right, so today this is just a quick lesson plan of what I'm going to be talking about. So to start off, I'm going to do a little bit of a review of genetics, because I know you guys just did a lesson on that. I don't know how in-depth you guys got, but I'm pretty sure you know at least everything I'm going to go over. Then I'm going to introduce you a little bit more about epigenetics, and then we're going to do a quick little activity. It'll be like 5 or 10 minutes. You have a little worksheet. It's nothing important. Just I need it so that I can have a little bit of evidence that I actually taught a class. Then more epigenetics, and then final questions. So if you guys have any questions throughout this, feel free to raise your hand. I can probably answer it, as long as it's not like, you know, what's rocket science told me. I don't know. So to start off, DNA. What's DNA? Someone? Anyone? Anything about DNA? Very good. So what does DNA do? I'm sure you guys know.
I know you guys know, so let's get some more people.
Yeah, so it's the blueprint. So deoxyribonucleic acid, very good. And it codes for the genetic instructions used in every living organism, so everything. And it's in everything that lives, but, you know. So it's located in the nucleus of every cell in your body, and you have roughly 37 trillion based off of a study done by Italian and Greek universities in the past few years. So there's a lot of DNA inside of you. And it's made up of the 4 nucleotides, guanine, adenine, thymine, and cytosine, which are represented by these different little bands here. I'm sure you guys have talked about those quite a bit. So moving on to genes. So you guys know what genes are, correct? So the segments of DNA that encode for the mRNA, which is transcription, to be made into proteins, which is translation. So quickly, can somebody tell me the process of transcription? Yeah. So the DNA gets run through with a protein called RNA polymerase, which creates a copy of into mRNA, which is then sent out of the nucleus to the ribosome to be made into a protein, which is translated. And so gene expression is something that's pretty important to understand. It's how the information of a gene is used, so usually to be made into proteins. And so how the information is used is very vital to understanding epigenetics, because how it's used relates to how much of it is used, and you need to know, like, really how much of it is used to understand how epigenetics is related to all this stuff. It'll make sense, trust me. So moving on, genetics, in the most broad terms, it's the function and behavior of genes. So, like I was saying, essentially how they are used. It includes the hereditary study of genes as well, so which is how genes are passed down to their parents and everything. And you guys know a lot of that. I don't do that. And it's everything related to genes and DNA. So that includes DNA stuff. So back to epigenetics. So like I said earlier, you guys have already got a little bit on epigenetics, and you understand a little bit. Sorry. And so in the most broad terms, if you're taking the word epigenetics as literally as you can, it means above or on top of genes. So that is everything. So what does that mean? It's something that doesn't directly change the DNA sequence, that it's still related to genetics. So that means it's anything that isn't directly affecting the DNA, but that doesn't mean like jumping rope or something, because I mean I got that good, but you know, but it means only things that affect the gene expression. So things like silencers, things like the DNA being highly wound, things like methyl groups, which I'll talk about, that affect how much the gene can really express itself, without actually going through the DNA and causing a mutation or changing anything in the code or cutting anything out. So, like I said, silencers, it prevents the genes from being expressed very well, and things along those lines. So to continue on with epigenetics, DNA is tightly wrapped around histones, which is, there's a lot of DNA inside of every single one of your nucleuses, of every single one of your cells. And so, to ensure that the DNA can actually fit inside of your cells, it needs to be wrapped around something, and so it's wrapped around these histones because you have a lot of DNA. And so depending on how tightly wrapped they are, the expression of them change, which has to do with methylation, which is the addition of a methyl group, which makes it harder for genes to be expressed. And so methyl groups are little groups of chemicals. I believe they are carbon and a few other things. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. And they are put onto the groups depending on different lifetime situations or things throughout your life that can make it either harder if there's more there or easier if there are less methyl groups, which is part of gene expression and part of how tightly wrapped around the histones they are. And so epigenetics is the reason your skin cells don't look like muscle cells. It has to relate to the fact that how your cells are expressed. All of your cells look differently depending on, or essentially because of epigenetics. And so now we're going to do a quick little activity if you guys can get to your computers, however you guys do that. I'll get your attention, please. Thank you. So you guys just went through this activity. I'm going to ask just a few of you guys, if one or two of you can give me your answer for all these questions. So, question. So after you've done this a few times, do you think it'll have an easier life and or better life if it receives a little attention or a lot of attention? One person. Go ahead.
I think that the one that is nurtured more, like the more relaxed one, will have not like as good life as the one that is less nurtured, because it can be a little bit too relaxed, and then the one without nurturing will be ongoing all the time.
Yeah. So, very good answer. Anyone else have a? All right. So that's enough with that worksheet. We're going to move on to the last few slides. So, some more connections to epigenetics. This is more examples. Epigenetics can happen in the sperm and egg cells. So what I mean by that is if there's changes to the epigenetics of a person, so if one of the cells is going to be more, or rather one of the DNA segments is going to be more tightly wound, and one of the genes is more tightly wound, this can happen in the sperm and egg cell, and this also kind of going off. This can relate to things like the parents eat before the child is conceived. So if a child's parent eats a lot of carrots, it can actually, before the child is conceived, the child when they're born can actually have a preference towards carrots. But this study hasn't been fully backed up yet. It's just been a few small studies that have shown this to be true. But I still think that's pretty neat. And then there's also connections to suicide rates and brain disease with epigenetics. So one of the things you guys hit on was affection rates of a child. So when a child is a kid, if they're more abused than another child who is not abused, when they reach the age of about 21, they have about a 2 times more likely chance of committing suicide than the other ones. And this has to do with the rRNA gene, which is some of the genes inside of your body, kind of obvious. And it also has a relation to brain disease, kind of in a similar sense, but I'll get a little bit more into that in the next one. And so epigenetics also may have to do with cancer. So as it says up there, if a gene is silenced, that may suppress tumors because you have certain genes that do that to regulate your body from always getting tumors. If that is silenced or more tightly wound, which is another way of kind of putting that, it could possibly lead to cancer, specific types of cancer. Not all cancers are done this way because some of them are radiation, some of them are just things you can't really control. And it's kind of scary. So that's just a little bit, and I think, yeah, that's about all I've got for today, or epigenetics. If you guys have any questions, now would be the time. All right, well, thank you guys for your time. I know this isn't exactly normal, and, thanks.